To have to answer today.
This is my boat.
We forgot your what?
We have that great duct tape right there.
Oh, you have duct tape?
Yeah,
Can you use some? Go for it. Thank you.
Morning, good morning. Duct tape has a better
You want
chance.
to just make it out of duct
That's
tape?
right.
What the heck? Oh, we have duct tape here. We just don't have that. Sorry, I have drawn a just the iris and the pupil. Yeah, just the iris and the pupil.
Wow.
Just the iris and the eye.
You're an
Very
overachiever,
confused.
Like a ridiculous overachiever. I know, right?
Yep, and then this, I asked my parents to give me a bunch of chocolate. That is beautiful. I make
Good morning, Matthew. We're still kind of in setup mode here.
Yes, that is cool.
I know, right? Right? Yes, you're going to hear everyone in the room say that. You shouldn't do cool things if you don't want people to fangirl you.
This is a milk jug boat.
I'm not sure that's really what people think when they think milk jug.
But it looks like a milk jug.
If I could make it into a real tapestry, it would be beautiful. I need the heckin' tape. I like your eraser. My pencil eraser.
Yeah, we have an
It's an oxymoron. You know what that means, right? Do you know what oxymoron means?
Yes. I don't want to think about it.
No, I'm not doing thinking. Eternally stressing out about things you can't control.
Thinking is for
Thinking is jump.
for homeschoolers. That's every day.
That is totally something Paul yesterday.
I feel like I was definitely in the mic.
There.
Does it have anything so that it won't tip over in the water?
All right, decorating, etc. Proceeding at pace. Oh my gosh. What an idea.
I need to return it to
I don't know what we're going to do with this one. Because Mother Nature's mocking us.
What is that? It looks so gross.
It's a cow, but they take it
To its soul.
it's just perfect.
All right.
Mr. Sue,
Yeah.
Vivian sends me this when she wants more songs.
Nice.
It's a cow's nose.
The cow's nose is moving.
All righty. All right, listen up while we
My very messy handwriting.
continue decorating.
Very messy handwriting. And
Then
yes, I
But do it quietly.
we can put more on the inside.
Where's the clipboard?
Where'd the clipboard go? Oh, it's right here. Ready to go. I'll be ready.
See how it is.
We have a bunch of stuff to talk about today, so let's get to some of that. Still 5 minutes after 6, this is great. Boy in space time. All right. We had certain plans. Mother Nature has mocked us so as possible with those plans. We'll come to nothing, but that's okay because Mr. C never has only one.
Only
I
one
will
word.
not be foiled. We will not be defeated. So, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'll be here all week. So, okay, good. Let's talk a little bit about the time period that we're dealing with. I just watched a couple of days ago a speech from John F. Kennedy, in which he talked about if you put all of human history into a 50-year period, so take the whole span of human history and condense it down to 50 years. For the first 40 years, we hardly know anything that happened. We have a few scribblings on rocks, some carvings, some burial mounds, and really not much else. Christianity is only about 2 years old under this 50-year time scale. We didn't even learn to write until the last 8 to 10 years. And most of the things that we take for granted came about in the last year to a year and a half. Remember that in the time period that we're talking about, this is in the early 1500s, you still barely have a printing press. We've been writing, but if you want to copy a book, what do you have to do?
Write it yourself.
You got to write it yourself.
No, that's true.
You got a bunch of people sitting there copying. So really, there's kind of only one book. What do we call that book?
The
But
The Bible. The book. That's correct. Yes, Bible means book.
The holy book.
Because then you could say, do you have the book? You could say, yes, I have the book. Except you didn't, because there were only a couple, and they're passed around from monasteries, and they're all written in that flowery Latin script that nobody can read unless you happen to be a flowery Latin. So, but that's okay, because you can't read anyway. So it doesn't really matter. Most people cannot read. So it's not important that we have large-scale literature. Although, we do have a novel. One. We only have one. But we do have one. Does anybody know what it's called?
The book.
It is not called the book, no. Anybody know? No?
The dictionary?
It is Don Quixote. Give the girl a star. Yes, it is Don Quixote. It is written by a man named Miguel de Cervantes. Miguel de Cervantes is Spanish. Well, he wishes he was a nobleman. He's not really a nobleman. He's kind of just a dude. But his life story reads like a novel. He was captured by the Moors, by the Muslims, when they invaded Spain, and put to work on a slave galley, where he spent a good chunk of his life, asking only that he be rotated from side to side so that his arms would develop evenly. At a certain point, his slave ship was attacked by another slave ship. He rescued the slave master. Some of this shows up later in movies. Ben-Hur.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of.
Sounds like Ben-Hur. Well, they ripped a whole bunch of Ben-Hur right out of the life of Miguel de Cervantes. He has a long and fascinating life, and when he is finished with all of that stuff, he writes a book, which he didn't really expect anybody to read because he didn't exactly sit down and write novels. That's not, writing groups were not really a thing. So, now, of course, everybody wants to write a novel, which is fine, and that's okay. I want everybody to do that. But most people will never finish. And that's okay too, I guess. To write a blank for everybody here. What is the, does anybody know the story of Don Quixote?
The what?
What's the story of Don Quixote?
An old crazy guy decides to go on an old-time adventure in a suit of rusty armor and his mighty steed, a very old and crappy donkey.
Very good.
Fight giants, which are really just windmills. So.
Which are really windmills. So you would think that he would have good success because they're not excessively mobile.
Wrong.
Wrong.
Got like
He loses to the windmills as well. He also loses to everybody pretty much that he comes up against, with a couple of exceptions. Yes. Do you need more paper? Fortunately, I have one, two more. Are you sure you don't need to? I think we should stop that. Okay. Yes, it, let's just say, doesn't go that well. What happens at the end? I kept waiting for the good part.
He dies.
Yes, there is not a good part. Yes? He spent all his time reading books about knights and nobility, about, I don't know, dystopian futures in which children are forced to fight each other. No, that's,
And then he got it all mixed up.
he didn't have that one yet. It was called The Thirst Games. And they, no, that is, no, none of that is true. Okay, you're looking at me like, okay, I'll believe you that, all right? But he spent all his time reading romances, reading romantic novels about daring knights who won renown and got the hand of the fair maiden.
Then he wrote this note for Lady.
He did. The milkmaid, that was his fairest and dearest. But here's the funny thing that happens when you do this. It doesn't work usually, but this guy comes down to us as a noble hero. Because he started off from nothing, he ended up with nothing. But in the meantime, he did something. He had adventures, and a lot of them didn't work out that well. And at the end, he's sort of disillusioned with that. But in the meantime, there's something noble about the spirit of it. This is the very first novel that we would call, in the modern style, a novel. This was called a romance at the time. But this is pretty much the first novel. And all the literature tradition that we have since then kind of grows out of.
I'm searching it now.
Miguel de Cervantes writing this sort of heroic tale. I have to say, I have to admit, I didn't like it. But I'm glad I read it.
Ooh,
Great book.
It's a great
It
book.
is a great book. Terrible, but great.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, so, in honor of this,
I feel you.
I thought we would try something ourselves. You should have a piece of blank paper. Raise your hand if you need something to write with. Pen, pencil, whatever.
I have a pencil.
I prefer
Are we
pencil.
drawing something or writing something?
Did we bring pencils?
You're writing this weed doing that, bro.
I thought we did. Oh, yeah, I don't either.
Your sketchbook
We
is
need to find
awesome.
those. Before you, well, we'll go back to it in a minute. If you can let those down. You can continue coloring on yourselves or whatever, but here's what we are going to do. We are going to write
RM from ATS for the main.
23 novels.
Really has Korean.
Right here, everybody says how hard it is. Nah,
That's my name.
we're gonna just crank it out here.
That's my Korean name. We can go.
Ladies, gentlemen. Okay, so here's what we are going to do. Here's how we're gonna make this work. In front of you is a piece of paper. Your job is, once we have obtained for you the necessary implements of writing, that may not work as well. You may now write in invisible ink. No, and you must portrait the paper, not landscape. Okay? What you're going to do is you're going to write a sentence.
Okay.
The opening sentence of your epic novel. Please, Charles Dickens, keep it to, reasonable length here. The idea is not, Mr. Hugo, to write a sentence that goes for a page and 3/4 about the sewers of Paris.
It's called a,
Yeah,
what was it called? A runaway sentence.
A run-on. Yeah.
A run-on
Even if
sentence.
it is grammatically
Or something
correct.
I
to
have
write with.
50 words.
Great visual.
Okay?
Okay.
Brevity
Fidget
is
with
the soul of wit. When you are finished writing the sentence,
Okay.
everybody listening to this part's kind of cool.
Yeah.
When you are finished writing the sentence, you will fold the piece of paper over so that it covers the words you have just written. And then you will pass that piece of paper, Wittershin, to the next person. If you are over here, you're going to hand it to me. I'm going to be your loyal servant and hand it over to the other side.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, sorry.
This is gonna be fun.
And you should always, when possible, move Wittershin. For those of you unacquainted with the true way of talking about clockwise and anti-clockwise, Wittershin is the word for anti-clockwise. It's the real
Did I
word,
write this J in the right way?
also known in the United States as counterclockwise, but that's just dumb. So we don't say that. Okay. What? No title. No title. You didn't give books titles at that point anyway. Okay, so.
Yes.
Quiet. Anybody
Okay,
clear?
good.
Anybody not clear? You're writing a sentence, fold the paper down, then pass it this way. If you are at the end of the table of the Wittershin side of your table, you'll have to lean back and hand it down. Yes? Can you be really crazy and really weird? Absolutely not. No. You must write serious, noble sentences that will uplift the soul of mankind. Come on, what sort of class do you think this is, woman? I know you're young and everything, but come on, you're bright enough for like any 10 people. This is, okay, ready? Does anybody not have a pencil?
Yeah, there's lots of people without.
There are lots of people with no pencils. All right, hold on.
Were you using this?
This is just the one.
Okay, I'm gonna use this.
But they're not sharpened. Oh, well, that's.
Mr. C.
No.
Mr. C.
It will, however, come all the way back around to you.
Me being Army.
Yeah.
Do we fold the paper forward or backwards?
I don't care as, it's as long as what you wrote cannot be seen unless someone is cheating, which no one will do. You'll write the rest of your sentences from the parking lot.
No.
By yourself. Wow. One sentence.
Before I
I
give
know.
the translation.
Honestly, I'm just writing the beginning
One sentence. Do not put your name at the top.
I know the Italian word for sugar. I know the Korean word for sugar. I know the Korean word for sugar.
That's the name of
Oh,
the
I
boat.
did let you in? Yeah.
I don't know.
Admit.
I don't care.
Sorry, okay, yes, Liam is good, all right.
I know the Korean word for
Pencil.
sugar. This stuff comes.
Not great, but-
It sounds like the word salt. Yeah, it really does.
Ready, go. You have 45 seconds.
To write? Okay. Write a sentence.
Yeah.
You throw in the middle.
So here,
I mean sugar smell, because this is made out of a deodorant thing.
and then you have to fold it.
Oh, that's why.
What are you drinking in your boat?
We need to see it.
Sail.
All right, you have 1 minute, let go.
What?
1 minute to write a sentence. Come on.
A
just
sentence.
Is the next person going to see the last person's sentence so that it can?
Nope.
No? Oh, okay.
Well, not yet.
Oh my gosh, this is gonna be such a random thing.
Am I skipping ahead?
No. But you should be writing. You
Oh,
have a
I
minute.
wrote.
You wrote. Oh, and you folded it. Oh, all right. Well, you're way ahead. All right.
I'm way ahead of you too.
What are we supposed to write?
The
We
matching
had the
phone
pop
case.
socket.
Hello?
I got this panda.
What are we supposed to write?
This, I got it because my last phone case was a glitter phone case. It protects the screen, so I got this cute one. And I love the texture on the back. It's great.
While we're doing it, and those of you who are done,
No, it's a
etc.,
plastic.
this one
It's
is
like
leading
the
way.
same plastic of a Nintendo.
Oh, like that.
I brought her with me.
It's like a freaking you can hold it. It's like a Nintendo Switch joy thing, but rough, and it's awesome.
Super understandable.
And I love the texture of the plastic of the
You're not right.
and then there's the texture. This is like the same plastic, and it's
Oh my
textured.
gosh. You have 10 more seconds.
I think.
Not an activity you do with your mouth.
Okay, well, that'd be safe.
Oh, it's gonna take credit for our lives here. Please also try and write small. A lot of people have to write here.
Seriously, I can see it through the paper.
That's a problem. It's fine.
It's a problem, but it's still fun.
You just want to fold it a little bit. Somebody's gonna have to write below you. You don't want to fold the whole thing out. Just fold it a little bit.
So the person next to you isn't able to see your sentence that you wrote, but you continue writing.
That is correct.
Uh-oh.
What?
So when you're done, you sort of fold the edge down like this. So that
Just fold it.
covers up what you wrote, but not more than what you wrote, so that you have an opportunity to. All right, 3, 2,
Wait, where?
1.
You're passing this
So that then the word is.
Pass your papers, Wintershed. It's this way. Oh, you do.
You pass that way.
You do.
Then where do I write?
You're gonna have a new
Wait
piece
for a
of
second,
paper.
he's gonna say something.
Yes? Where's the new piece? You have a new piece of paper.
That's
I
exactly.
think he's gonna tell us
You're gonna
to.
write on as if it was a new piece of paper. Right
I.
here. And you're gonna fold that down when you're done with that and hand it to the next person.
So are we just doing noble sentences?
You may
I'm very
continue your
confused.
same story. You may decide, dang it, that was a dumb story. Anyway, and write
I
you.
like my story.
You may attempt to mentally link up with the person who was maybe you a piece of paper a minute ago and figure out what their story said. You may not read what they wrote. Ready, go. Ready, go.
So we don't look at.
Ready,
You
go!
may not look at what was written before you.
Did you write about a boy or a girl? A girl.
I hate English letters. I hate them.
We'll be outside in a bit, but we're doing this first. But we are gonna come outside, you can join us.
What are you guys doing? Writing a sentence about what?
So you can kind of like show what's going on, so that it's not super boring. For people who are online, that would be great. When you're done, you have 10 more seconds.
I'm a school.
And fold it over again. And we'll pass it Wintershed again.
So bad.
As soon as you are done, you can fold it over and pass it.
So now I'm writing right here. And I do have a pencil sharpener if we need that. Am I writing here?
Right on
Or here? Or here?
You are writing here.
Okay, right.
Good. Actually, from now on, I'm going to do.
Why the big handwriting? Why?
That was him.
Okay.
I tried doing tiny handwriting.
Show the ships here in the hall.
Everybody needs to put a name on their boat. We have a bunch here that don't have names. That's not okay. Because these are super cute.
We have
The boat, number one. I don't know if I can read all of them for you guys.
Put it on the paper, that's fine. But we also want labels up here, and we'd like your name on the back side of it as well.
The name is on the side of the boat. I can't see it when I go in the
Only running one sentence. Yeah. The M.
Morgan. I named it the Morgan.
The Morgan. I love it.
Also on my show.
I will control it.
There's little pieces of
When you're
paper.
done, just pass it. You're going to write 28 seconds. Some of you, this will be the most you've ever written in your life. And that is okay, because your life needs to broaden and expand its possibilities. I know. For some of you, this is an average morning. I shall. I'm glad you have basket
Put it wherever you want.
That's critical. No, I'm totally. One of the most important things going today. Write the sentence, fold it down, pass it on.
Oh, man.
Don't get motion sick while we're doing this.
Seriously. All right, more books. Okay. We got everything. Is that? We have.
Oh, I'm sorry, not silly. Well, too late now. When you run out of space on the paper, I guess the story is over.
Guys, fold it small.
Try to fold it small. And thought we were gonna have to do 28, but we were accordioning some of them. Yeah, I know, it sort of snowballs on you a little bit. I get that. Do the best you can. You probably won't get, some of these probably won't get all the way around, but it'll be a good start. You know? What? Cool. Oh, I'm sorry, very good. Adrian, you're boy, right? I do. Never asked you to do that. No, not her, but like in general. Never asked you today. If you have reached the bottom of the page and there is no more space, you can flip it over and start in the back.
song, take three bars and run.
I don't really know. You'll have to like unfold it as you go up, but you're out reading stuff, and that probably won't work either. Maybe no accordion in it. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how that's.
Probably still
Hey.
Still room. Still room.
I'm actually trying to develop a story.
I remember the first time I did this, I kept trying to impose narrative structure on it. Oh my God.
Well, I people have such big handwriting.
It was utterly unforgettable.
It's a great movie too quickly.
When you hit the bottom, yeah. All right, when you hit the bottom, stop.
Can we read it now?
No, in a minute.
Oh, I read it so fast. Where's mine? I mean,
Mine's
oh, it's gonna read one.
Now, I'm just curious, whose story began, I was born? Graham?
I was
Okay, here's your, don't read it out yet. We have others that have exhausted there. Whose story began through the plains and past the mountains, there lies a village that looks ordinary, but on the inside it is very different. That is not a bad line.
Oh my gosh.
I actually really cool. I like that opening. Now I want to read the rest of it. Probably has nothing to do with it. Probably not. Okay. Others that are finished.
They want you to read that opening line again.
Oh, we'll read it out again.
Okay.
That's very good. Do you want to steal it? Yeah, you're welcome to do that. None of this is copyrighted.
Let's say the same thing over and over.
This one began with a story. Oh, wait. Once upon a time, there was a frog.
love
Is
it.
that you? Oh, you're going to love your second sentence.
Oh my God.
This is one of my very favorite creative writing projects. All right.
No.
He griped his no, that's grip. He gripped his sword in the dark. This moment would change the fate of the world.
Hilarious.
Okay.
What?
Hold on. Okay, I will get to it. All right.
I'm not fast.
We pan down over the White Mountains onto. No, so what? Because the next line is, oh no! All right, actually, here's the way we're going to do this from this point on. Does everybody have, wherever you are, whatever piece of paper you have, even if there's more, it stands with you. So here's what we're going to do. If you don't have one, because I took one, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay. Unscroll your paper.
I haven't finished my sentence yet.
I'm
Finish your sentence. Unscroll your paper.
log over here because mine's slow.
Yes. The worst experience I ever had playing Pictionary You ever play Pictionary? You know where you draw and people have to guess what it is that you're drawing? The very worst experience I ever had playing Pictionary was when I had smuggled a couple of Hungarians into Austria so they could be baptized. Oh. Hello to all my old communist friends. Anyway, we smuggled them into Austria. One of them was an actual artist, like a guy who did full-on art. He was the worst player of Pictionary I have ever played with, because if it was spool of thread, he had to start off with the thread, and then it got to the spool and he needed shading. He was figuring out where the light source was and perspective, whatever. When he was done, it was absolutely glorious, and you totally knew it was a spool of thread. But 26 minutes had gone by, and the timer was 3. He was impossible to play with. He could not do a stick figure holding a sword. He couldn't do that. He had to like draw the full out like it was Rembrandt, which is awesome, but not how you play the game. So this game is lots of fun until you pass your paper to an author. And then they're trying to write literature instead of just moving it along. All right. Over here. Okay, so come here. You have absolutely no idea what this says?
No, I'm
Okay.
serious, I can't read this.
Yeah, here is the. Okay, I can read it.
Wait, I want to try it.
Okay, so we're gonna read this together here. They are dead. The dinosaurs are dead. Never make allowances for, okay. On the night you wanted a brain, my childhood was pretty normal until I turned 14. Death is all I wish for. Riley backed into a corner and looked up. Riley, where are you? The honestly fat old man, face red both from fury and climbing the stairs, stabbed a finger into her face and yelled, "Evicted! Evicted! Evicted!" What? Who began their story with dead dinosaurs? That was the dead dinosaur. You can keep this lovely piece of literature for your journal. Hey, how about your experience? Can you read it? Okay. All right. Lydia is going to read us her story.
Wait, come here. Is this like flag to you? I'm not sure.
I think. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay, this one says, once there was a flag who wanted to be a boat. I was born in 1991 at 2 p.m. on June 7th. I wish to be free. Hey, Alexa said, where did the Hydro Flask come from? Hey, where did Riley go? A fist pounded on her door. She stood up, lifting her toddler onto her hip before she answered the door.
Ah, very good. That's excellent. Who began with a frog or possibly a flag? Who wanted to be a boat?
It was a log.
It's a log. Who wanted to be a log? Kevin, okay, cool. Kevin, that's a masterpiece of avant-garde fiction. Yes, like what? Yeah, please come on up. Make respectful attention, please.
Once we found the Poe's Loop. It was beautiful. That Saturday, I had to go to the park unwillingly, I might add. She leapt into the air, spinning, cutting left and right with her shard blade, sunbeams, the stupid friend telling her to run. But she couldn't. Dwight walked into the window. Why are you vampires still here? Then Evan died. She had a problem with cows. He had a problem with cows, and they lived in all right conditions.
Who began here with,
You found the color blue.
we found the color blue?
It was beautiful.
And it was beautiful, very good. Very good. Is Blake now the designated reader? Okay. All right, cool. All right.
There was a flash that shook the trees, and in the distance he saw it. As the light increased, he saw them. He tensed only a few seconds more. The boy lived in a small cottage near a river, and then he died. Mr. Scorch said, "You can be happy if you stop crying." My history notebook attacked Mr. Yeah, not responsible. My history notebook attacked Mr. C. I'm not responsible for this. So the flash that shook the trees, and in the distance he saw it.
Oh, that's a good line, by the way. I like that. I want to know, like, what flash shook the trees, but then I died. Because I was attacked by a history book, for which no one is responsible. That's why I don't do history books, because that's not true.
All right. It begins very characteristically. You know the words that I'm trying to say. Once upon a time in the cottage, the soup was just finished as the family sat down where, oh no, it was a pine tree. It was bursting with light. It was well he did from the top of the hill. He could see a cloud of dust coming from the road. The river spirit liked the boy so much that he was granted powers. But then a devil made him blind, and they all died.
Oh my gosh, Rachel! Of course, people need to die.
Okay, who began once upon a time?
Is she the only one who started Once Upon a Time? My God. What did I know? Oh, Once Upon a Time. How many of you put frogs in your story?
Rachel, you gotta raise your hand.
Oh, I would have, oh, that was a log, not a frog.
There's my three.
Okay, come on up.
We'll do orienteering.
Okay. It should be set, but it starts at our car.
Okay, cool. I'll let you tell everybody.
Okay.
The ant were gone. The trees were growing older, wavy. There had been expeditions across Middle Earth, but they had vanished. Some of the young ants had forgotten. Their tree beard knowing at all. They were hobbits. He soon found that Jordan had sent a letter that was unreadable. Died. He really liked that cow. So the men took out 5 cents in normal currency, and the bird was paid, and his mom was dead.
Wow.
Like the dinosaur.
Who started off with the end?
Sorry, today. I have a plan. Okay.
Wow, that was pretty good. That's Sabrina.
Yeah, that's mine. I started it.
Where's a couple more? Okay.
It was a dark and stormy night. A man died of pancreas cancer Some walked in. Then wallowed in misery. Need food? Dinosaurs.
Let me, Chris,
I can't do this.
Some of these should probably be read by professionals.
it was a dark and stormy night. A man died of pancreas cancer and his son wallowed in misery. Need food? Dinosaurs. That was when the bird said die and attacked. I don't know what to write. Me neither. The end. The glitter stone ring rang. Oatmeal is only worth anything with pickled beef. So who wrote It's a Dark and Stormy Night?
That's a great open. There is actually, believe it or not, there is a literature contest called the Bulwer-Lytton contest. And the idea is, behind this contest, is to write the worst possible opening sentence to a book. It is a prestigious competition, and winning the competition is it's a big deal. I will, when we are done here, read you a couple of the winners.
Oh my God.
They are real bad. Real bad. Yeah, but Edward Bulwer-Lytton famously, he wrote a book, Snoopy, those of you know your Snoopy, okay? When Snoopy starts a novel, he always starts with the same line, which is, it was a dark and stormy night. Edward Bulwer-Lytton wrote a book that started, it was a dark and stormy night, but he was like the first one to do that. Because of that, then Snoopy used it, and now it's like this big literature contest. These sentences are spectacularly awful. So bad, but some of these, totally in that ballpark. A man eats a pig. The dinosaurs are dead. More dead. We have a lot of dead dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs.
They died by meteors. I bet it's meteors.
Me too.
Good job. And that when the donkey said, "Why the long face?" This pain on the right bottom side of my chest. I thought I had a cold, so I asked my mom if I could stay home from school. I am not a very Wow, that got cut off about me. The nice jerk and blood was spilt into the clear water while that explained.
That's why.
Take me with you. Origami birds are stupid. A man eats a pig. Whose man was eating a pig over here? Okay.
Oh my
Wow. What? Yeah, go on.
Once there was an ice cream cone, and it liked to cry. One time a pair of shoes was sad because it was being bullied by a pair of heels. A bug then landed on the ground and released poisonous gas, and lots of trees died. When they found the color red, and it was very beautiful. Goodness gracious, she screamed. One eye broke, and I broke her nose. You pushed on the coins, throwing them in a spraying at the Steel Inquisitor. Harry
That was me.
Harry saw Voldemort coming for him at the end of the forest. He died. He was sure, took his wife and went home. So who was when there was an ice cream cone and it liked to cry? Go. I have two more, but you can go. I'll go.
Don't die, guys.
Okay, here's the beginning. It was the worst of times with the recent food shortage, and as he wallowed, a bird came and told him that his wife was stolen. The two kids ate each other. They are dead, and they are dead.
the dinos are dead. Something will happen in 3, 2, 1, 0. Oh no, life is bad. You wrote it was the worst of times?
It was the best of times.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, there was a frog, and so the ice cream cone would cry itself to sleep every night. A tree had a party to go to, and it was feeling super sad because he wanted to go to the gym instead. Moose then walked into the room only and pooed on the couch. We found the color purple. I stared at him, watching, waiting for him to strike, daring him even. The socks were the best thing in the world. The blood gushing from the heart, and he said, "Avenge me," and died. The end. Go ahead.
It was a long time ago in a place sort of far away. He jumped off the cliff. Call 208-495-2168. A lion killed a duck and said woof. She said I could, and I stayed in my room all day. That didn't change anything, so I stayed home again the next day. Life is fun. There was a scream.
That was me.
That was you.
Yeah, a long time ago.
If you guys stand in the middle, the camera can see you.
Shut up, get it live.
This is how my story started. She loved pizza. She loved pizza so much she made a big pizza. As this was happening, other events transpired that were sure to excite. Oh no! There were 2 sons, dead sons. That night he slept in a cave. He could not leave anyone know who he was to everyone. He was like the shade of a shadow. The boy grew up and got stronger, and as his powers progressed, but then he died. So this is how my story started. That's me.
Oh my gosh.
It's our story. Gotta have mine. I'm waiting. Okay, I can't tell which way is the top.
Just open it and then you'll find it.
It'll have an up and a down.
Okay. Okay. Maybe someday I'll understand, but right now my head is so. What?
So gouged.
With worry that he'll get me. Oh no. The pizza.
Pizza girl.
Was lactose intolerant. Everyone hated him because every time he touched his friends, he would get sick. He had a sore throat and diarrhea. Pizza diarrhea, FYI, is nacho cheese. A swan swooped down and took the child.
Oh my
Thank
god.
heaven.
Then Evan died.
Oh my god. Who did it?
By a knife in the face. The birds said that his wife was right next door.
Eat my dog.
Eat my dog, fool. Boom. Fly, no. Fly, fix you, fool. another one.
Explain that.
It started with maybe someday I'll understand, but right now my head is so dosed with, okay.
Who?
What was that word? What was the word before worry?
What? Oh, it's clouded.
Oh.
Oh, I was so confused. Okay. Why is that making you? It is. I want to read one. I am so ready. Okay. Okay. It was the best of times. Then it was the worst of times. Then the best of times. And now back to the worst. When Evan died. Last words were I hate you. But the bird would not tell him where his wife is until he was paid 5 cents in normal currency. You killed my pig. Give me back my pig. Wait, what? Okay. My mind got stuck for a second. Yeah, I refuse to read it. The duck says, Matt? Hello.
Move.
Okay. Hello, sir.
Nice. We got shorter as
And
we
this is
ran
hello,
on.
sir.
Hello, sir. We started it was the best of times, then it was the worst of times. That was beautiful. How many do we have that have not been read? I have a couple that haven't been read. You want to read, or you want to let Sabrina read it? What do you want to do? What? Sabrina read it? Okay. You read it. Let's get the rest of them. Let's go.
I'll try to read mine as fast as.
Go ahead.
I'll wait for her to do it just because I've done a lot.
Okay, Sabrina.
Okay. I am busy and welcome to my story. Sigh, I knew this would happen. Where's the milk? I need it. Jelly yeet. No. The line beeped and her sister picked up. The piano teacher watched while she played her new song. I just sat there looking forward to this to find out what was happening. I wish I had to eat that.
That's hers.
I wish I. Was that over here? I thought it might be you.
Wait, so I don't know what I'm getting is because it's on two sides.
It's hers anyway.
It's hers.
She knows.
Okay.
She knows it.
You can go after me.
I'm busy and welcome to my story.
Wow.
Through the plains and past the mountains, there lies a village that looks ordinary, but on the inside it is very different. And if you look into the eyes, you will die. Then one day the ice cream cone walked past Mr. Sugar, crying. The strike of lightning killed the main character of this story. A big green popcorn ball fell on a house and killed 4 people. But the color blue was evil. I should run away, but
Every story has it.
I should run, but the way he followed was amusing. So through the plains and past the mountains, there lies a village.
That's a good one.
You are a goof.
Alrighty. This story is kind of long.
Oh, great.
Yes. My name is Jackson, and this is my story. All of a sudden, a sheep floated by. Technically, that's not true, said the monkey. He didn't say anything, just immediately hung up and started constantly sobbing on the kitchen floor. Have options, have hope. She cried? What I saw was a floating fish. Alright, who's
That's
that?
fine.
This story is kind of long.
No, it didn't start with that. It started with my name is Jackson. And this is my story.
It's mine.
Monkey really told me.
There we go.
Okay.
start. Okay. Once there was a stink bug with cancer.
Come on, are you telling me you wouldn't read the next sentence after that? I would.
Oh my God.
That actually fell.
Oh, great.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah,
Yes.
oh boy.
When we found the color blue, it was beautiful. My mother ran away when I was young, not the way to start life. It was her greatest fear, glitter glue. Bigfoot had finally caught a fish. I finally caught a fish, but it was Evan, not a fish. JK, it was a fish. Thanks, the man said. He was dumb. Boo. Blood, blood, and death.
Okay, whose was this? Once there was a, come on, it's a great opening line.
Let me just unroll this really quickly and then I'll see. Okay, this may be yours. As the clock ticked on, Cassidy punched in the last number she could think of into her phone, begging whatever deity might exist that this person would be able to help her. The grass was soft under his bare feet. The lambs jumped around his legs. The light dissipated from my eyes and everything started to come into view. He said, "Love, love, love. I love Pete. I love love." Then he kissed Lisa. They decided to buy a horse to help with this problem, so they went to the market. Oh no! He saw it jumped over the roof. So who was? Okay.
Once there was a very creepy tree. When you found the color blue, it was beautiful. Wow, look at the stars, my dad said with a look of awe in his eyes. He's saying, Chopper Disney, run, run, run. She realized that he was just seeing random words. The clown smiled, blood shining off its fangs, and he killed Evan.
Poor Evan. He's been dead a lot, yeah.
He really hated Evan. So he walked over to the barn and punched the goat in the face. I eat 5 cats.
Did you say I eat 5
I eat 5 cats. That one I think is a lie. There's one more?
There's a couple more. I was waiting for that line. I wrote that line and I was like, I'm so excited for whoever reads this just because it's funny.
At least you're not a lactose intolerant pizza.
That's true. Riley ran practically flying with speed. Her landlord would be knocking on the door any second, demanding she pay up the last 3 months of rent, and she didn't have a dime of it. She lay wide awake, listening to the distant howls of the dire wolves. I was afraid, worried. I didn't know what was happening. Everything was happening so fast. Dead, dead, dead. I'm dead, he said. As they approached the ocean, they could feel the pebbles and heat of the waves. Oh no! He was awake, and he was ready. So
I was born again. A plant with burned grass around it. As they came closer, he sprang from his hiding spots. The boy fell in the river and was greeted by a river spirit by the name of Tukantala. And then she saw a spirit, and Mr. Ice Cream Cone said, I don't know. Then Rachel's glitter markers turned on her and made it so she was covered in it head to toe. Then everyone died. Then everyone died. Who was born? Again, that's the second one of those. Okay, everybody got there? We get through them all? Or we still have some? Good?
His number is 208-495-2168.
Awesome. Oh, that's over there. It's the number to here. Here are a couple of the winners of the worst first line in fiction contest, just so you can compare. Okay. Shockingly, honestly, reading through these, it sounds a lot like some of the stuff that we just read. And then some of these are actually so bad, they're really good. The three Black Forest elves, Twinkleman, Sparkleman, and Von Dazzleberg, were sitting at their merry campfire, frying their wursts and ham hocks, slathering their rich black bread with the grease, drinking the icy magical Rhine water, and one of them at least puffing away on a pudgy little elven pipe. When who should show up but the other famous elves, Oberon, Titania, Galadriel, Elrond, Tinkerbell, the Munchkin Lollipop Dude, and that thing on the airplane wing in Twilight Zone. That's the opening sentence of the book.
We have a chick named.
One of my very favorites, this one comes from Malaysia, okay?
Malaysia?
Yeah, from Malaysia. Imagine writing this sentence in your second language. That was magic, all right, though she belatedly realized she should have known because everybody else was wearing robes while holding staffs with knobs on one end and screaming nonsense like Merlin's beard when she unceremoniously dropped in their midst, and it really shouldn't have taken her being changed into a creature of the amphibian persuasion to comprehend that. That's a bad sentence, people.
Nope.
Yes, it is. It's grammatically correct.
In the forest of Thrangool, Dobo Snabely stared at his quest companions, Bolto Dwaven, Eagle Thepnus, Night Hunter, and Lythan Elva. Looking to a map of Husker Du, Dobo knew they would traverse this entire world to burn the wand of Shazna in the fire pit of Mount Hapla. So Dobo chucked it in the campfire instead and went home. Oh, we'll get to that. Oh, yeah. Historical fiction winner. With his lamp giving off a dull yellow glow, General Washington sat up late into the night contemplating his problems. Not enough food, not enough clothing, not enough men, and that idiot Private Doodle who kept putting feathers in his cap and calling it macaroni. Right? Right? Come on, that's terrific. Attila sat alone on the crest of a hill overlooking the bucolic village he would next pillage, envying the simple lives of its denizens, but comforting himself with the knowledge that they would soon all be murdered. If Vicky Walters had known that ordering an extra shot of espresso in her grande, non-fat, sugar-free 1-pump raspberry syrup, 2 pumps vanilla syrup soy latte that Wednesday would lead to her death and subsequent rebirth as a vampire, she probably would at least have gotten whipped cream. Oh, wait. This one's worse.
No.
Dwayne made a very unfortunate zombie. The coroner had removed his dentures and all of his clothes before he reanimated. Thus, he was destined to stagger naked through the woods, attempting to gum small animals to death. It's pretty bad. This is the runner-up, and then I will give you the grand prize winner.
Oh my God.
Here's the runner-up. We can't let the dastards win, said Piper Bogdanovich to her fellow gardener, Mr. Sidney Beckworth Hammerstein, as she clenched her gloved hands into gnarly fuzz fists. Because if I have to endure another year after which my royal puffin buttercups come in second place to Marcia Engelstrom's fainting dove teardrop peonies, I will find a machine gun and leave my humanity card in the Volvo. That's the runner-up. The Grand Pajandrum Special Award. Here you go. After his 7th shot of Jack Daniels, Billy reflected that only a certain kind of man, a Roman Catholic priest, born under the sign of Gemini, whose loved one had been run down by a bus full of inebriated Lazio supporters on a glorious Sunday morning in early April outside a provincial church, whose bells were ringing Bach's toccata and fugue in B minor, would truly be able to understand the abyss of despair into which he was drowning. Yeah. If you get to the end and you go, what? Then you've written a really bad sentence. And there's a chance that you could win the Grand Pajandrums Special Award for the worst sentence in the world in 2015. That was only part of 2015's winners.
Okay, it's mostly red.
Every year there were.
Accessory.
That's actually really good because of how like in depth it goes into like one character and then it's just like Roman Catholic priest.
It tells you the whole story. There's no point in reading
Man. And here's the worst opening sentence of a children's book.
Oh my gosh.
You'll love this one. Jacob and Eliza had been warned by their parents on numerous occasions never to venture into the amber woods after dark or risk some vague and unspoken fate once within the trees. So they didn't and just played in their front yards instead.
Oh my goodness.
Sounds good.
Wow. It actually makes sense.
Have you ever thought about rewriting the fairy tales and actually writing them as if the people in them did the things that like normal humans would actually do?
Yeah.
They don't last very long. Then the queen finally had a child, and they invited all the fairies in the kingdom, including that one fairy that smells bad and everybody thinks is weird because she keeps shouting, Merlin's beard, all the time. But she got an invite too, so she doesn't end up showing up and cursing your child to fall asleep for 1,000 years. Yeah.
I actually learned something really cool about that.
What?
About, I don't remember
Merlin's beard?
the exact post.
Falling asleep?
No, about the
Little children.
about the
Famous fairy?
about the socio-political ramifications of Sleeping Beauty's parents' choices not to invite Maleficent.
Oh. That was a terrible sentence too. You should write that down. That was really good. But sir, she said quietly from the back of the room, I have an intelligent comment to make about the socio-political ramifications of the king and queen's refusal to invite Maleficent to the christening of the child. That would make a horrendous first sentence. I love that. I'm sure it is. But it would make a terrible first sentence. I am curious as to the socioeconomic political ramifications. But that's because I like really bad literature. Okay, we're going to go outside. Gear up. The sun has arisen. Your mistress for the next bit of entertainment is Corinne Wolf. Big round of applause. And more or less dead silence while she explains what it is that you are going to do. If you brought a compass, now would be a great time to get it. If you brought this magical device, I brought it. May God smile on you forever and may all your ventures prosper because that thing is amazing.
I have a phone that has a compass app.
The epoxy is still sticky.
So you said something about we making it for you.
Corinne.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, guys. If you will pay attention for a second.
Respectful attention.
Okay.
Okay. So for compasses, just so you're aware, the red side is north and the other color is south, and that's important. If you do not have a compass, we have a couple you can borrow, or you can share with a friend. But what we're going to do is we're going to start out at the car, and there's going to be different pieces of paper on different markers that tell you the next direction to head in. That's basically it. We're going to go, and you'll just go through the whole thing.
How many of you have never done an activity like this before? Never tried to use a compass for this kind of thing? How many of you have done this before and sort of have a vague idea? If you are one of the people who raised their hand first, find someone who raised their hand second and become their close and dear friend. Or at least their annoying shadow that won't leave them alone.
Okay, a couple more instructions, you guys.
Can you use a phone?
No, just use a compass.
It has a compass.
So this is a compass.
Okay,
That's cool.
Yes, you may use the compass.
Okay, a couple more things. If you get to a spot and you can't find the piece of paper, you can go back to the previous one and try it again. For
Please don't sabotage. Oh, yeah.
Green, please.
Leave the paper, because it's the instructions for anyone to go. But we're gonna go out to the parking lot. We're gonna start at the same place. We're all gonna start at the front of the wolf's car. So you know what that looks like? If you don't follow the wolves, we know what it is. Is there anything else I think I need to cover? Make sure people know. Oh, some of the papers have numbers on them. That's because I was using this compass that has lovely numbers around the side. I think most compasses do have those numbers.
Most of them do.
Numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a general, like, I'll say southeast, and it'll say 140. That's because you're gonna go approximately in that range of 140 between the 2 degrees. So that's everything I think you guys need to know. If you guys want this compass, anybody can take it, but we can go outside now.
Okay, let's roll. Where can I be best helpful?
Yeah.
I'm very good at that. You have a compass. Never say I didn't give you any. Oh.
Do we need to turn this off for right now?
What?
Turn this off for right now.
Oh,
Yeah, we don't, there's no pictures.
yeah. Okay, we'll be back in half an hour probably. Does the map tell you where you are though?
No.
Not really, no. What? If it's on your phone, okay, ignore that for a minute, I'll stick with paper. Yes, Mr. Green.
It's a picture that shows you where a certain city or mountain or river is.
There's a phrase I want you to, that's right, there's a phrase I want you to remember. The map is not the terrain. The map is a pictorial representation of a physical object. Some maps are better than others. Some maps actually correspond to the land. But think about when, and I should have brought this book and I didn't. I have a book called Newfound Lands. It's a book of the oldest maps of the New World.
I want to see that.
It's fantastic. Yes.
So are paintings of people just maps of that person?
Maybe. And the maps also, they're supposed to be accurate, but are they? And how do you make sure that they are? The smaller the area the map is supposed to represent, the easier it is for it to be accurate, right? If you had to make, for instance, a map of this room, you could probably get it relatively accurate. If you had to make a map of Melba, that's going to take a bit longer. Melba is not a large metropolis. I don't know if you all are aware of this. I know you had to fight the rush hour traffic to get here this morning. You saw 2 cars? Wow, in Melba, that is rush hour traffic. Okay, so, but to make an accurate map of Melba is going to take you a while. You're not going to be able to get that done in a day. That's going to take a while. And Melba is real small. What if you're making a map of Florida? How do you even do that? You drive along the coast. You look at Google Maps. We have satellites that go, I need to know where I am. Let's retask a satellite and I can figure it out. Yes.
In one of the earliest maps of the world in Jerusalem, I believe he was in Jerusalem, the world was like a Finnish spinner. You had one leg that was Africa, you had one leg that was Asian, you had one leg that was Europe, and Jerusalem was in the middle. It looks absolutely nothing like the actual
It looks nothing like the actual
thing. It
thing.
looks like a fidget spinner.
On the other hand, does it look like the actual thing? Have you looked at a map of the United States? And then have you gone out and looked at the United States? Does it look anything like this? No, it doesn't. A map is not meant to be a pictorial representation. There's a guy named Stephen Wright that I really love. He's an older comic. But he said, one of his favorite ones is, so my friend gave me a life-size map of the United States.
Hold on, wait.
That's the whole joke. Like, and you can hear the crowd like start to get it, you know, a little bit at a time. Like, wow, okay. Obviously, you have to shrink it down. But then when you shrink it down, what happens to the accuracy of the map?
You have to, there's some accuracy, you don't have enough room on the paper and you can't draw that small unless you're like the fairy or something.
Yeah, also, the map is flat.
It's like the world.
But the earth is curved, so it doesn't work right. The maps that we're used to seeing of the world are hilariously distorted. They're hilariously distorted. Alaska is this little tiny thing up here. Alaska is about 2/3 of the size of the land mass of the United States, the contiguous U.S. It is gigantic.
It's the largest state.
Greenland looks really big. It's not close to as big as Africa. Africa is gigantic, but it doesn't look that big because of the way our maps distort. So they're not even accurate. And now think you're Columbus, you're trying to go someplace that no one you know has ever tried to go, that no one that we know of has ever come back from. You don't even know if it's there. How do you know how big the Earth is? How big around is it? How do you know?
The Egyptians were able to calculate it using two obelisks and the way their shadows lay.
Okay, what do you have to be able to do in order to make those calculations? Math, a lot of it. It's not simple. The first calculations came down to about somewhere between 24,000 and 29,000 miles. A mile, by the way, hasn't been invented yet. Do you know what a mile is? How far is a mile?
5,280 feet.
5,280 feet. Why? No. It's true. I mean, there's a reason. Do you know what it is? Yeah.
Because it's 5,280 people's feet.
Okay. What is a foot?
The length.
The length of a foot. Whose foot? Adrian's foot. It's a lot more of Adrian's feet than it is of, say, Kevin's. Come here. Come here. I just picked Kevin at random. Okay, Sarah. Come here. What's a foot?
It's the length of somebody's
Yeah, that's in my head.
It's made of words. It's made of words.
You don't sit down. It is, but it means something. How do you get everybody on the same page? Oh, we back in? Oh, we're back in. Cool. Got it. Thank you. How do you make that the same? And the answer is you really don't. For a very long time, your feet, someone else's feet would be different. A foot is an English unit of measure, but the French had a different one, and the Italians had a different one. And so when they tell you how far something is, how do you even know what that is? In the Bible, Noah's using cubits. How big is a cubit? Approximately, but I don't know. I wasn't there then. When they calculate the world, they're calculating it in stadia. A stadium was a unit of distance. But we're not quite sure exactly what that unit of distance is. So we can get it for the scope of the Earth. He says it's so many stadia, which we believe calculates out to be about 24 to 29,000. That's 5,000 miles difference. You realize that the difference of 5,000 miles erases the entirety of the continent of the United States. Like it's gone. The whole of North America is not 5,000 miles wide. So if you miss the circumference of the Earth by 24 to 29,000, like that's pretty good, right? I mean, you're in the ballpark. Except that the ballpark could or could not include 2 of the major continents of the planet, depending on whether you got it right or not. Reagan, did you hear it?
Yeah, I was gonna say that back then, they used the measure of people by having men line up and putting their feet together, and then someone would lay down and how many feet you were, and that's what you were before like.
Yeah, okay, so you're using physical objects, somebody's foot, the king's foot, for instance. And a yard is basically this, roughly. But I'm roughly 6 feet tall, so this is roughly the right distance, but it's not quite exactly the right distance. Plus my arm might be longer, shorter than, it would be longer, shorter than other people's arms. So getting these things together is really hard. So when somebody says, well, you're going to go from here to here, and that is such and such a distance. Well, how do you know what that distance is? You really don't, because we're all measuring different things. When Marco Polo says it's this far from Jerusalem to China, do you know what he means? Not really. Can you mess this up by a significant amount? Yes. Now, if all you do is live your whole life in Melba, does that matter? Why do you care how far it is to Nampa? If you never go to Nampa, why does it matter? But suppose you're going to go to Nampa. Is it going to take you a week or 2 weeks? That's not a small. How do you even know how to get there? What direction is Nampa? Oh, it's that way. Well, suppose then you're going to walk that way. How do you know you're still walking that way? Suppose you're off by that. That way should be this way instead. What happens?
You made it by 2 miles.
You're going to miss Nampa. You're going to walk right off into nowhere.
Well, maybe he's going to the middle of it, but then
Maybe if Nampa's a really big city, and maybe not. And the farther you go, the bigger difference that tiny little adjustment makes. It starts to matter. If you're in a ship, what exactly are you using for your landmarks? The word landmark is kind of a problem, right? Because ain't no land to mark. So you get out in the middle of the Mediterranean, you want to go to, I don't know, Spain. Where is it? How do you know? And then wouldn't it be a good idea if you're in a sailing ship to know where the water stops? You can look at the stars. The stars sit right there and never move.
No plane moves.
Oh no, unfortunately they do move. But we do have one star that only moves a little. So we can use that one. If you're sailing north, dang, great idea. No problem. We'll go north because that's just, well, what if I'm not going north?
If you're going south, you put.
South, you put it behind you. East, west, great. And suppose I need like a fine gradient. And also here's the problem. What happens if the water runs out before I stop my ship? It will stop your ship for you. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Oh, your ship will stop. All the way into the late 1800s, you have ships hitting stuff because they got there sooner than they thought they were going to. Figuring out north and south, east and west is okay. Figuring out where you are on that is fine, but longitude is a massive problem. Latitude you can work out. The equator, the angle of the sun, all of that kind of stuff. But longitude, how far it took forever. You need a clock. Let's talk about clocks for a minute. How do you, actually I have a little experiment, okay? Before I talk about clocks. So I have a task for your table. If you don't want to add your table, you might need another. Yeah, every table needs a straw. Now these are bendy straws, so they have magical properties. Sure. You could have a longer string, but these strings are shorter. We are used to the idea that we know what time it is, or that it's not very hard to find out what time it is. By the way, a mile, miles, is Latin for thousand. It is 1,000 paces of a Roman soldier is a mile. The average Roman soldier then was about 5¼ feet tall. The average Roman soldier is about 5¼ feet tall. There are many, many, many of you in this room who are substantially taller than that. You would be really, really, really popular in the army. Real popular. Because you're going to be big. We're going to be giants. They're going to put us in the front where we're going to die sooner than everyone else.
Okay, I'd rather.
But except we're not, because we're going to be twice the size of the guys that we're facing off against, and we're just going to like drop a hammer on them and crush them. Because they're going to be shortish. 5,280 feet in a mile, because that's 1,000 paces of a Roman soldier. So we still use that in the United States, and they use it in Britain. But where don't they use it? Everywhere else. More or less everywhere else. Yes, that's right. What do they use instead? Kilometers. They use kilometers. They use meters, which are precise measurements of wavelengths of light. What do you need to be able to do in order to use wavelengths of light for something? Light. You got to be able to see the light and figure out how to refract it, and then how to split it, and then detect the wavelength. This takes a long time to do. You can't have meters until the very last little bit of human civilization. All this stuff, we just take it for granted. Miles, yeah, it's so many miles, or it's so many kilometers, or it's so many whatever. We just take it for granted. Of course, that's the way it is. Of course, we have a map. If we want to know where to go, we just look at the map. But somebody had to make that. And how far do you have to sail to be able to tell how far away something is? The first maps of the United States, they look like Florida, like the bottom part. They're like this wide. Why? Because, well, that's Panama, right? It's about this wide. So then you just, the whole continent is probably just about like that wide. When they got to Jamestown, the very first American colony, permanent, the very first colony that has actually stuck around, when they got to Jamestown, one of their goals was to hike over the mountains to the Pacific.
Not really how it went.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and even that one, you don't quite get to the Pacific,
You get over the Rockies and you're.
and then you still have to walk 300 miles before you actually get to the beach.
A lot closer than
They weren't aware that it was 3,200 miles. They didn't know. How could they know? They couldn't. You had to actually walk it. They paid people. There were people who were trained to walk with the steps being a certain length. And they paid those guys to pace off between cities so people could tell how far they were. Think about that as a job.
It's not very absurd, actually, because in Australia, they teach the news people to speak the exact same way.
Okay, uniformity is an important thing. We need to make sure that all the steps are the same. The Mormon pioneers came across the plains. You know how they figured out how far they had gone? Does anybody actually know?
They measured their
Yeah.
wagon wheel.
They tied a cross to their wagon wheel, and someone would count how many times they go around, and then they.
Today, your job is to to walk next to the wagon wheel and go.
2, 3.
How much of the scenery are you going to get to take in? Suppose you zone out for a minute. That would never happen. I mean, you would be laser focused on it all the way. No, of course you wouldn't. So then you would maybe put a thing on there that would make a noise. So at least, there's a chance you cut a strap of leather or something so that when the wheel went around it would click or something. I don't know. Somehow, because it's ridiculously boring to try to do this, But somebody has to, because otherwise you don't have a map. You don't have any way to figure out where you are. You can't trade. But if you had an accurate map and people who actually knew how far and how long it was going to take, man, those guys were incredibly valuable because they knew they could open up new areas to trade, new ways to communicate. Your task with your straw and your string. Your task is to make a timepiece. What? I was going to call it a clock. That's a specific kind of timepiece. That might be the way you want to go about it. How would you do that? I mean, you have a piece of string and you have a stick. You have enough to make a timepiece. Ready, go. You have 5 minutes. Good luck. You're going to invent time. Congratulations, you're going to invent time. You have your string and straw. You have a string and a straw. You might do not draw on the tables, but you might want to put markers. Here, you raise your hand if you have a ship up here on the table, or you put it on the thing. We need photos of that. So, Mrs. C will be coming around to find you, to take a picture of you and your boat. Oh, we have a passenger on this boat. Very good.
And he's very scared.
Okay, I hope that it has. You got 4 minutes. 76 reservations. You may use resources around help. We also have a little Scotch tape you can use. If you need a sail, we have lots of sails up here still.
I will just bring this.
I genuinely have no idea.
Can they cheat? I don't even know what that would mean. We're inventing time. You may not use an electronic device for this operation. You may not use an electronic device. That's not an electronic device. You may not use an electronic device. Please listen to what I am and what I am not. Say it. You may not use an electronic device for this operation.
That's nice.
I didn't say you couldn't. Okay.
That'll work.
It's like photo bombs.
Got 3 more minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, time has not been invented yet. You have 3 arbitrary units of such time as I deem necessary.
Where did the tape go?
Tape ended up over there.
I swear that tape was, she needs something, that tape was. I know.
It's the largest group.
They have the most idea. Well, it's engaged by being more.
Okay, and no, it's not just a straight process. And then you'll end up with a lot. Yeah, and then that's what it actually looks like when you're done. I got it. I will definitely do that.
Okay, Lamb. So the idea is we just split our time into 24. Let's just do 24 hours. We'll call it an hour, okay? And then we'll break that up into, I don't know, 60 chunks, we're gonna call those, or minutes. And then we'll break those up into 60. All of these are on base 12. So it's 5 times 12 and 5 times 12 and then 2 times 12. This all comes from Mesopotamia. They had a base 12 numbering system. So base 12 is very efficient in some ways. We don't really use it anymore. We think of 10 as being sort of the round number, but there's any particular reason why we would use 10 or 12 or any of the other kinds of things, right? So the idea being we've adopted this part of our numerical system from the Mesopotamians. We also grab Arabic numerals because if you don't do that, I mean, if you're trying to multiply by Roman numbers, like how is that going to work? Have you ever tried multiplying MCML XVI by XVII? Yeah, no, you can't do it. Well, first of all, they had no concept of zero. And without zeros, you can't multiply. It's not possible. So the Romans built all these amazing cities without being able to do the kind of math that every third grader can do, because the numerical system didn't allow them to do that. So when you need people to multiply, divide, subtract, add, all of that kind of stuff, you can subtract and add in Roman numerals, but you can't really do any multiplication. At your ships, your harbors, all those kinds of places, you're employing Arabs and Jews who are familiar with a numerical system that includes zero and that will allow them to do big number multiplication so that you don't have to count everything by hand. It's much more efficient, right? So then we get that numerical system comes out of there because of that's the way they did this. And all of these systems that we're used to using, somebody had to invent these, somebody had to think about them, somebody had to put them together in a way that would allow us to be able to use them. And now we just take it for granted. We just know how all this stuff works. The number of miracles that have to happen in order for somebody to be able to reliably sail a ship just a few miles is unbelievable. The amount of technology you have to have in order to know how to direct your sails, how to be able to use a rope and pulley system that will allow you to angle your sails so that you don't always have to just sail with the wind or else pull the sail down and then row, because that's the other way that you get places. It makes it much, much more difficult to get anywhere unless you start developing these kinds of technologies that we just think, they just happen. They didn't just happen. In order to do celestial navigation and figure out how to steer your ship over long distances, you have to have people who know how the stars move. It becomes a really big deal. Galileo, Kepler, Brahe, all the guys who were looking at the heavens and trying to figure out how the stars move and how all of these things happen. If they don't do that, then you don't know where you are. And then you have to stay inside of land. Think about how much faster your ship can go, how much less time a trip would take if you didn't have to be inside of land all the time so that you could know where you were, if you could sail out into the middle of the ocean. We don't start really doing that until the 1500s. It's not that long ago.
I think the Polynesians were doing it even before then.
Sorry, say that again?
I think the Polynesians might have been doing it before then.
Oh, right, okay, and that's actually a really good point. We're talking about the European tradition, but there were people who had been doing some of that stuff. Like if you grew up on an island, how much more important would it be for you to figure this stuff out?
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't walk anywhere except around your island, but you can see over there might be another island, figuring out how to get there becomes real important. And then you start doing that. If you're in Europe, you're, on the part of a contiguous landmass that is, what, 60% of the land in the world?
Yeah.
So you can, if you can't sail, I guess it's not the end of the world. But for a lot of other cultures, no, it would have been in order for them to be able to do that. We just take this stuff for granted. But the number of scientific innovations and the people who were putting these things together and figuring out how to do them in the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s is unbelievable. And the things that they come up with and the ideas that they start handing out to humankind, most of those ideas are wrong because they're trying to figure stuff out. We don't think about that because only the ones that ended up working for us are the ones that come down to us. But of course, we pruned off all of these branches and different ideas about how the world worked as we went along. The more I study this stuff and the more I think about it, the more blown away I am by how truly awesome some of these minds had to be, not to work out things like gravity, but to conceive of the whole idea of gravity. Like to even government is my favorite one to use. If no one has ever voted on anything, how do you come up with a governmental system that's based on voting? How do you even think of voting as a thing? How do you even? But people did. I'm amazed by that, and I hope to convey some of the wonder of that as we talk a little bit more about the stuff we have here. All right, what did you come up with? How am I? What did you do? No, but you might want to use it.
So we assume we interpreted using electronic devices.
All right.
Tested it using an electric.
Well, you tested it with a light source that moves. Okay. And how do I use this light source that moves to give me this time frame? How do I do that?
So you go outside and set the time in a non-windy day.
All right.
Which is not good for the sun also to be shining. So we might
Sun also need to be shining. Okay, you use the sun.
a little bit of a shadow.
Okay.
You have to line it up.
You have to line it. Okay, so that's me pointing in a particular direction.
Yeah.
All right. And then what do you do with it?
And then
We're gonna try to show you guys the clocks. Maybe I should unplug. That's a good idea.
So how many time periods does your day have? You have 12 in your day. Okay, cool. All right. And how did you get an accurate circle here?
we use the phone to go across.
Okay, you can do that. All right, thank you. You can use. Did anybody find a different way to make sure their circle was accurate? And I use the string. What is that called?
You fold it into eighths, and then when you have a big dish, you crease it in an arc.
Nice.
And then you cut along the arc and then fold into a perfect circle.
Then you cut along the arc.
I couldn't get it into a perfect circle, but we got pretty close.
That's pretty close. Okay. What, by the way, if you ever use the device to make a perfect circle on a piece of paper,
I'm annoying.
what is that called?
A sundial. Use it with little markers.
See, I need to make shapes to make markers.
It's called a compass. Do you know why it's called that, by the way? Okay, but why when something goes 360 degrees?
Where's you guys' clock?
Compass something, it should surround it.
Falls on the numbers. Nice. Well done, guys.
So you make a circle which circumscribes
as or. It draws a line around whatever it is that you are doing. Did anybody do this different? Everybody come up with a different idea?
Here, bring it down more. Camera. Nice. Thank you. Straight lines. There's a shadow.
Okay.
So when it's on this line, and then on the shadows on this line.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Did anybody not divide their day up into 12 or 24 bits? 4. Okay, well.
we did 4 too.
It's a multiplication. It's a
Four.
multiplication.
Technically, we did 4.
Did anybody go for more? Nobody did 15?
No. Showed yours.
Anybody do like, I don't know,
How did you guys do yours?
9? 90, 141.
And that's how you make the circle.
144.
Yeah.
Think about this for just a second. Suppose you're going to, you guys know how to do this. Yeah, everybody sort of pretty much immediately said, oh, look, I have a straw and a string, I can make a sunrise. What else do you need to have in order to be able to make an accurate sunrise?
An actual sunrise.
Oh, that's so cool.
What?
Did you say that yet?
No?
You should when
You
he
need
says.
some kind of information, okay? You need a flat surface. Is the sundial going to work real well on a slope or on bumpy ground? Maybe it would be different calibration and you'd have to be able to get above it in order to be able to use it well. And sometimes you would need to make sure that it wasn't, you didn't care if it was terribly accurate. You need something else. How many of you did yours at like a 45-degree angle? Okay? Why did you know there was a 45-degree angle? Because we know about degrees. Well, I suppose you don't. If your stick is straight up and down, is that going to be a problem?
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. If you're on the equator, noon's going to be a problem. You don't have a shadow at all. Although, you might say, hey, look, no shadow must be noon. The equator's pretty cool for that because the sun's just going to, and it's going to be a regular period every day, so that's nice.
Hey, Mr.
If you
Smith,
live up here, much closer to the Tropic of Capricorn.
did you hear the clock idea yet?
No. Okay, so over here, we have a different idea?
Well, you know what kind of stuff above you is new, and then you calculate from there. So time zones were established, that's how people.
You're going to want to hear this.
Like a lake or river or something, and when the tide comes in, it will go to a certain notch and I'll show what time of day it is by that.
You're going to build a tidal clock. I love this idea. There's only one tidal problem. You probably thought of it. The tides don't come in and out at the same time every day. However, do you care? Here's another question. Do you care? Suppose you are a fishing culture, and you know that when the tide comes in, the fishing is really good. And when the tide goes out, the fishing is terrible. Do you care what time the tide comes in? No. No, you just need to know when it comes in. That's actually a really interesting clock. Now, that's not going to be a solar clock. What is that time, that clock going to mirror?
The lunar cycle.
How does the water, what makes tides? The moon. The moon does. So this is going to be what kind of clock?
Lunar clock.
This is a lunar clock. Beautiful, yeah.
I said lunar like 3 times.
Thank you. You're very smart. You're going to build a lunar clock. Is that going to be a problem? It depends again. What are you trying to measure? Why do you care? If what you do is fish and you don't plant, and you're not trying to build an annual clock so that it covers an entire year, why would you care about a year? Why is a year important unless you're in a place where it gets warmer and colder? Suppose it's roughly the same temperature every day, no matter what. Do you care what point of the year it is? How could you even know what point of the year it is? Otherwise, how could you have Christmas? Okay, well, yes, but you don't have Christmas yet because that's not a thing yet.
I know what time of year it is, so I want.
Because I want to know how old I am. Okay.
Sabrina,
Why might that be?
Like the tropics, they don't get snow.
If it's the same temperature all the time, it won't get snow, unless you're in a place where it snows all the time. And then maybe you don't care there either, I don't know, I don't live in the North Pole except for a couple months a year.
Didn't you say there's snow?
I am
know
Mr.
that
C.
was you, never mind.
He is technically Santa Claus.
I am Mr. C, but I only really have to be there for 2 months a year, the elves have most of it, I just get in the way. Yes?
He has to go be a leprechaun.
No, leprechauns, they're nasty, leprechauns are mean.
Oh,
Yeah, you
oh,
can
yeah,
get
you need to know what time of the year it is. Yes, because when, if you're, especially if you're a plant, you're a plant civilization, that's the word. Because you need to know if the first frost has already passed, or when the last frost has passed, you know when the first frost is going to happen.
So if you're farther up the latitude, it makes a difference.
And you need to know when you plant certain crops, because the time changes.
Very good, that's right.
Plants, some plants you need to have first frost here before you harvest them. I know the type of grapes you have, first frost needs to happen. You need to know where to plant them, because the angle of the sun matters, because plants are picky. They do. Yeah.
Most of human civilization develops right along the equator because it's warm. I mean, that's the number one thing.
Plants will grow all year
And
round.
plants grow all year round, so you really don't need to be able, but if you move north, you get to Germany, it starts to make a difference when you plant. You plant too early, your crops freeze. Granted, you plant too late, they don't have time to mature, so you have to be able to do it. A lunar calendar will not work for that because it's close, but it's not exactly doesn't divide the year up very
Native
well.
Americans used the lunar calendar. They had the green corn moon and they had the harvest moon, because if the moon would change, vary in color, and that told you, okay, for last frost is probably past, you can plant our corn now. Or
And if you're in the jungles of the Yucatan, do you care whether it's spring or fall or whatever? No. I mean, your temperatures don't really vary that much. But you might have, even in India, there are periods when it rains and periods when it does not rain. And it might be a good idea to figure out which one of those you're in as far as planting crops goes, so calendars start to become important. You all did a pretty good job putting together the idea of a sundial, but that's because you already knew about it. But you also all divided it up into 12. Why 12? Because that's what you're used to, but it doesn't have to be 12. Not necessarily. You could do it in 4, you could do it in 5, you can do it in whatever you want. Does it matter what position you put the sundial in? No. Kind of. It better be facing
the sun.
Well, no, actually, you don't really want it to do that. You want to face it away from the sun, which means you need to know what? Okay, where the sun's coming from. Well, over there somewhere. And then it goes down over there somewhere. Where are you going to point your sundial? Kind of just somewhere around here? North. Oh, now that's a problem. How do I know what that is?
North Star.
Well, I can use the North Star. All right, I can lie on the ground. How long is it going to take before the things move?
There's 2 stars in the row. Look like the moon star.
And there are actually. If you turn off all the lights, there's a lot of stars over there.
That's why constellations are important, because the Big Dipper, tells you
Where the North Star is now, but we reverse engineered that. We started with the North Star, and then we did the Big Dipper, and then we said, oh look, these 2 stars point, not exactly, but close enough, to this big blank period in this place in the sky where, oh look, there's 1 star. Have you ever been any place where there were no lights like forever in any direction?
It's so pretty.
Can you find the North Star that way?
Yes.
No, because there's too many stars. How long do you have to lie on the ground looking at the stars before you figure out, oh, that one doesn't move?
The Greeks did it.
Yeah, but it takes a long time. And you're going to be seriously sleep deprived. You don't have a time-lapse camera on to be able to say, oh, look, they all go around that one. You don't have that. You out, Reagan? You love blessings. See you. You also can't use the North Star to tell you time, because North Star is not going to tell you anything except which way is north, and is it exactly north?
No.
Also, there's different kinds of north. Are you aware of this?
Yes.
You have that one, that kind, magnetic north, and what other kind of north? Starts with true north, very good. Now, they're real close. Magnetic north and true north are really close together. And that doesn't matter unless you go about 1,000 miles, in which case, if you're following magnetic north, you are a couple hundred miles away from the people following true north. And if you go any farther than that, well, now you're going to run into major problems. Let's say you're trying to sail, oh, I don't know, across the Atlantic. And you're keeping a logbook for how far you've gone. Guess what's not going to be correct? How far you've gone. Okay, fine, but you're not Nathaniel Bowditch, who has the benefit of another 300 years of human history before he starts doing his stuff. Columbus is keeping 2 sets of books. It's true. In his cabin, he has a logbook with how far he thinks they really went. And then they have the logbook he shows everybody else, which is how far he's telling them they went. They're not the same. But also, they're both wrong. What he's telling everybody they sailed farther because he wants everybody to say, oh, well, we must almost be there. It's good. We're almost there. We're almost there. But Columbus's own book says, ooh, baby, we are not making the kind of progress I thought, but they were both wrong because he's following magnetic north because that's what his compass is telling him is magnetic north. He doesn't know that there's a difference between magnetic north and true north because no one's ever gone that far that fast. Do you understand that? There are people who've gone farther, but they walked or they, rode a horse. Columbus is covering more ground faster than anyone in the history of Earth. All of a sudden, it kind of makes a difference if there's a 3 or 4 different degree of difference between magnetic north and true north. Never mind that Columbus's calculation for the circumference of the Earth is based on an error that got copied into an ancient text. And so he thinks the Earth is about 16,000 miles around when the Earth is 24,000 miles around. Now, lucky for him, there's a gigantic pole-to-pole landmass in the way that you really, realistically cannot miss. If you just keep going east, west, far enough, you hit it. Oh, he did. Actually, he never did. He didn't even hit the landmass. He just hit the island chain that kind of protects the landmass, but whatever. Fortunately for him, that was about where he thought China was. China is 9,000 miles farther away. You could never make it. You run out of food. You run out of water first. Water's heavy. You can't carry enough of it. Traveling that far, and you can't drink seawater, why not? Okay, fine, it's salty. Yes, I understand that. So is Gatorade, but you can drink that.
Our bodies are wimpy. If we can consume several forms of literal poison with 3% salt, and we die.
That's true.
Ouch.
Pretty dumb.
Yes? Wait, careful. I like this thing. What?
I'm pretty sure that if you boil or distill seawater,
You can't. Well, boiling water means you have to have fire. And fire and ships do not like each other at all. Actually, that's not true. Fire loves ships.
Ships don't like fire.
Ships are already married to the sea, and if they flirt with fire, they die. So you try not to do that. So boiling is not really an option. In order for your body to process the salt out of the water, it takes more water than you get. So you actually die of dehydration while drinking water. That's the part about our bodies that's really funny. So they're going to run out of water. Water is incredibly heavy, plus it gets super scummy and gross. They're in barrels now. We're not in plastic jugs with Clorox in there to keep them nice and They're in barrels. They're made of wood. You know what's in wood? Beasties. You know what they do when they get to water?
They drown.
Make more beasties! Yay!
Or they drown.
Which is great if you're on Mars, but it's not so great if you're here and you need to drink it later. Because some of those beasties are like, ooh, this is a fun place to be. There's actually one of those stories that I did not read you. is about Timmy the Tapeworm.
Okay.
It's super, it's one of the children's books. Anyway, okay, eventually you're gonna have to be able to do it accurately. And to be able to get latitude and longitude takes a clock. Clocks are great, but how do you make them?
Magic.
Yeah, magic is about the only thing I can tell you. Lots of little gears and springs and stuff that's incredibly difficult to manufacture. So it takes forever to do it. You could get a pendulum clock, but on a boat? Well, I mean, if the boat sails directly straight and there's never any wind and there's never any waves, that's going to be great. Otherwise, we're going to be using sand glasses, which is why most ships use the glass. Strike the bell and turn the glass. And that tells you how long, sort of, it's been. What if you're in the middle of a battle and the sand glass runs out?
Smack it.
Oh, well, I hope you have a nautical chart that tells you when the sun will be at noonday the next day, and you have a sun, that would be nice, and you're not dead, that would also be helpful. If you're dead, probably this doesn't matter, but I don't know, maybe it does, I've never been dead. So, you know, then maybe you have a chart, but remember, why do we know Nathaniel Bowditch? Because the charts were wrong. And they kept losing ships who were trying to get through calculating the tide and position, and he kept having ships run aground, and he went through and fixed most of the errors. You can actually buy his book. I don't know whether, not Carry On Mr. Bowditch, which is a different book. That's a book about him, but his actual nautical textbook, I bought it. Yes?
His book is on all of the nature.
How about that? But the reason we know this guy is because this stuff was wrong for thousands of years. Right? I actually bought a copy after I read the book. I thought it was so cool, and then I tried to read it. Not as cool as it was. I don't know enough math to even understand what the heck he is talking about. But you better know how to do that. If you want to be a captain, you better know how to figure out where you are. Because if you're off by a day, one day, on a voyage of a year, you're going to hit something sharp and it's going to tear the bottom of your boat out. And you know what, if you're a captain, you know what you get to do? Shipwreck. You get to go down with the ship. That's what you do, the captain. Mostly because they're going to court-martial you and hang you if you don't. For losing one of their ships. You know, and some of their men.
Do you even have any other option to not go down with your ship if you're out in the middle of the sea and you hit something?
Well, okay, if you hit something in the middle of the sea, you are spectacularly unlucky. Generally speaking, if you hit something, you're close enough to land to at least be able to, like, you know, see it. But that's not always true. There are submerged mountain chains, all kinds of things. Sometimes you can go over them in high tide, and it's fine. Do you know when high tide is? Nope. Do you even know about high tide? It would be a good idea to know that. All of these things we take for granted. Time. We know what time it is. We're going to arrive at 3:38 p.m. I need to get to a place I retask a satellite, and whoa, I have a perfect map, although it's not perfect. Yahoo Maps is famous for having driven people into rivers and ponds and stuff. Sure. All it has to be is off just a little bit. There's a James Bond film about this, as a matter of fact. They just moved the satellite, you know, a couple degrees. And so everybody using that satellite for navigation is now off by hundreds of miles from where they thought they were. We're dependent on that stuff because we don't know how to calculate anymore. We don't even know why we did it like this. And nobody thinks about that. But somebody had to.
Until you're lost.
My amazement is not that people were able to make a clock, but that somebody thought, hey, I might want to divide things up into these tiny little increments, and here is a device that would do that. To even take a world in which there were no clocks and make a clock is amazing. How do you even do that? We're seeing innovations in painting, in music, in literature, in every field of human endeavor. You have people looking at stringed instruments and saying, you know what would be cool? What if I took this harp
and I built a box behind it, and then lengthened the strings. I wonder what that would sound like. You know what it sounds like? It sounds like a guitar. It's very cool.
Or violin.
Or a violin, or a cello, or a bass, or whatever. Instead of just we have a lyre with 4 strings on it, or a mandolin, or a banjo, and now we have like 500 different instruments.
What about a lute?
What about a lute? And then it could be, what is the name of someone who plays a lute?
Right now,
A lutenist. Someone who plays the flute is a flautist. Bozo. I don't know. No, I don't. I have a ukulele. Okay. A ukulele mistress. I'm happy to be a ukulele mistress. Okay, but now you have all of these different kinds of instruments, but somebody somewhere has to say, what if you do this with it? What if you change it up like this? What if you
Blow it up.
What if you blow it up? What if you stretch it out? What if you compress it down? What if you, and people have to think of these things, and the people who do this, it boggles the mind. If you turned off the power in our civilization, just turn the power off, that's nothing else. Almost all of our civilization would completely collapse in a period of a couple of months. There'd be hardly anything left. What? Massive EMP. All the power goes out now. What? Well, the answer is
We're hosed.
because most people don't know unless you happen to have a book on your shelf like I do called What to Do When the Power Goes Out. All I have to do is open the book.
How you gonna read?
Die.
Light, Daytime.
Oh.
Hopefully it's daytime.
Huh. Well, that's not. I should probably open it before that. Die.
Yeah.
How to die slowly. How to die quickly. Both of those are useful. Okay, but here's the thing. Do we know how to replicate these things? You know that there's such a thing as a steam engine, right? Does it need electricity? Do you know how to make one? I don't either. Yes.
I don't know if we can kind of see this with like YouTube videos and very quickly, much faster than thousands of years. Where like one person comes up with an idea and it works, and then hundreds of other people copy it, and then it starts to slowly less work. But then that first person is still like much more successful than they were, and like that idea.
You actually know how to do the thing. Knowing how to make a fire without a match is a useful skill. I hope actually that it never comes in handy. But it might. Thinking about forms of communication. I mean, once you cut off the power, how do you talk to people? And if you're even several miles from home, how do you get to home? And when you get there, what can you do?
Stare at each other all day and
Awful lot of people in Texas, in the middle of the richest civilization on planet Earth, and the temperature dropped to 26. Oh, the horror. 26 degrees, or, you know, Tuesday in Idaho.
We're all sitting here like really.
And civilization melts down.
No, it freezes. It's cold.
Oh, sorry, other way around. Civilization freezes. 26 degrees. Okay, but remember, I mean, if that, it would be something different here. But it could be something different here. Have you thought about the black swan? What happens if? And what do you do? And how do you think about this? And then when you read this history and you look at painters and sculptors and people who decided, you know what, I'm going to do this a whole different way. Be blown away by the fact that they could do that. Their whole lives, all the sculptures look like this. And then Michelangelo says, you know, I'm going to carve it like this. And probably people are like, dude, that's dumb. Oh, that's ugly. Why does it? Oh. And now everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's the greatest sculpture.
Okay, don't be surprised if people aren't really excited about you changing things up. This is what I wanted to get across my parting shot. We take for granted the fact that we stand on the top of a mountain we didn't climb. Somebody carried us up here and we were born here. Take a moment to appreciate the miraculous amount of effort that it takes for all of civilization to have reached this point. You don't know how to make a pencil. And it's not, okay, yeah, no, very good. There's an essay about that. How many different people doing how many different things does it require for the simplest pieces of technology to work? And if one of those things stops, how do you even imagine a world that would be that much different? Our next episode of the History Show deals with a bunch of guys who said, you know, I get the whole Pope thing. I get it. It's cool.
What if we did?
Well, what if? What if I wanted to talk to God direct? Now it's like me. And what if, I know, but stay with me here. What if he would talk back? I know it's nuts. Let's go fishing. But once you start being able to read, once you start thinking about the things that are in the book.
No, we're just annoyed because none of us know.
Let's change class to outside.
Why would you do that?
It is a daily miracle that we're alive. And it's an even greater miracle that not only are we alive, but almost certainly the magical rectangular box in our house almost certainly has food in it that we can eat. Almost certainly. I didn't say it's for you. Your mileage may vary.
Unless you just got a new refrigerator and you haven't moved stuff over yet.
And if the magical device does not, you have other magical devices that you can wave at people and they will give you food that you can put into the magic rectangular box, which has so much advanced technology in it, you don't even know what's in it. I don't either.
I know, I do.
Fine. The problem is you live a long way away from me and I'll probably be dead before I can walk to you. And even then you can't fix it. You might know what's in there, but you can't fix it. Yeah.
No, I can't fix it.
Yeah.
Are we going to put Copernicus next time? Or did we already cover it?
No. Next week, Copernicus, Kepler, Brahe, Michelangelo, Monteverdi. We get art. We get Shakespeare. Think about this. You have 10,000 years of human history. And you have the most complicated thing you have is very long and very awesome spoken poetry. Thank you, Homer. And in a period of about 100 years, you go from Don Quixote to Shakespeare. And then the box is open and Pandora's spirits are out, and now you get, I don't know,
Movies.
Now you get Nacho Libre. I mean, you know.
I hate that movie.
I have not seen it.
Mr. C.
I feel now that I have been deprived, though. I do, and I feel like we need to find a time.
Why?
Yes, what? We can read poetry because we are now writing poetry. Michelangelo was a great poet, by the way.
I know I want to read.
He's a great poet.
He's also
We have people writing books of political philosophy. We have people nailing 95 complaints to the door of their church and saying, you better deal with that or there's going to be trouble.
Can we sing the poetry?
Can we sing the poetry? That's just weird. When would you sing poetry? Oh, I'm sorry. Anytime you sing. Yes.
So this is a little bit of an off-topic question, but you've seen Napoleon Dynamite, right?
Oh, yeah. My sister-in-law is in Napoleon Dynamite. My brother's wife is in Napoleon Dynamite. She was not his wife then. I know, I'm actually cool, right? You didn't think I could get any cooler, but now I am. What? Because my brother that I fought with like a bag of wet cats when we were kids married a girl that I didn't know, and now I'm famous. I'm not, and neither is she. But yes, I have seen Napoleon Dynamite. What? She is Pedro's sister. She doesn't do lines. But the screen actors field card. Yes.
Are we gonna do anything with the ships we brought, or is that?
Okay, well, the idea was to race the ships that we brought. But the idea was we didn't want to do it here on the floor because wet. And we want to keep using the building. So we were going to do it outside, which would be great, except
It's freezing.
when you are sailing a ship, you need wind. But you only want a little bit. If you get too much wind, yeah, then you don't sail no more. Then you sink. You do go real fast first. And then your sails rip off and then you die.
Have you ever heard?
Human beings like it to be warm, but not too warm. And cold, but not too cold. And windy, but not too windy. And sunny, but not too sunny. And wet, but not too wet. And not too dry, and not, and not too salty. Salty, because no salt is bad, but not too much salt. When you think about it, humans exist in like this little tiny box of
Perfection.
You're right.
Somehow we're alive.
This is what's called, by the way, astronomically speaking. Does anybody know what that's called? Where the planet is?
The Goldilocks.
It is called the Goldilocks zone. That is an actual astronomical term. Because it's not too hot, and it's not too cold. It's just right.
Humans need this very, very specific gradient of everything, and we made the entire world conform to that.
Yes, that's also true. We can put it in little boxes and take it with us now. We call it air conditioning. It's awesome. We can do that in submarines. We put it in a little box and go down toward the bottom of the ocean. And we can put it in a little box and crawl our way up to the North Pole. So now we can go almost anywhere on the planet in our little boxes that give us that very extraordinarily small range of stuff that we can tolerate.
Well, not tolerate, but like, we can tolerate a huge range of temperatures. We don't have to like it, but we can tolerate it.
Not for long. Not for long. A sauna is great, but not all day. That would be bad. You would not tolerate that.
But there's a reason humans are spread all over the world.
It's true. We are very good at subjugating the world in our little boxes. Yeah.
Heard of Hamlet?
I heard what?
Hamlet?
No, I don't think so.
It's like Hamlet, but with the H on the
Oh, no. Oh, I should have, no. Now we need to talk about that. Yeah, Sabrina.
So, I think it's really cool how much technology is progressed. Because if you think about it, it's kind of crazy because we have this magical little screen that can show us anything we want. And then we had to invent a website. And then somebody invented a video that somehow has things in it that make us
All
laugh.
magic. All just completely magic. I have no idea. Arthur C. Clarke says, and this is my parting comment on it. True. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. We live in an age of magic, and if you do not get on your knees every day and thank God that somebody figured out how to do this stuff, you need to repent. Yes, sir.
I'd like to see how some people react from way back then to look at how needed they were brought into the future.
Yeah, we do have, Mark Twain wrote about that, Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. I think he had a lighter. And that was enough to make him king of the world. He's magic. I mean, it's pretty stinking great. People ask me all the time as an historian, when is the time period that I would most like to live in? And I always say
tomorrow. And they say, well, what, you know, knights in shining armor or whatever? And I'm like, drafty chapels and no plumbing? Nah. Plus, you know, only one book, which I also can't read.
Morgan, she was like, I was excited. She's like, you put her on the suffering and all the
But what about sailing down the Nile on your barge? And I said, but what about Spotify?
What about crocodiles? What about hippopotamuses? What
Plus,
about
the
all the
only
other
things
things?
that you can listen to are whichever slaves know how to sing whatever songs they know. I want Maroon 5. I press some buttons, boom. Music flows out of the air into the thing and out of the thing and back into the air and then into my ears, and it's amazing and I love it. And Bluetooth. Thank you, Harold. Bluetooth, invented by the Vikings. No, the Vikings provided the rune, and that's all. But they did provide the rune. That's.
And then there's also the fact that if you were to go back in time, if you brought all the knowledge that you have now, everyone would think you were a witch.
And they would probably, kill you.
That would depend on the time period and the place that you went to.
True, but it would also, even if you know how a radio works, like I know how a car works. I know how an engine works. But I don't know how to make any of the things to make it work.
Well,
I know about pistons and combustion and sparks and compression of gas. I mean, I know that.
You need refined metals and you need a lot of different refined
Yeah, well, I know that part. I don't really know. So if you provide me with modern technology, then I know how to use modern technology. And I know how it works. I just don't know how to make it get to where it could work. Because I don't know how to do any of the things you have to do to get it to work. I know how a steam engine works. But I don't know how to make the metal to make the engine work.
And you don't
I know how to make fire. Hey, that's big technology.
I mean, if
Fire's a big deal. We talked for just briefly about that the Romans didn't have zero.
What?
They didn't have
They didn't have zero.
The people in ancient India did.
Thank heaven.
And they had basic algebra.
Thank heaven. Because the Romans did not. But the Romans built these gigantic, awesome cities with no multiplication. Because you can't multiply Roman numerals. There's no zero. You have to have zero to multiply. Meanwhile, the Incas, who were building grand, glorious civilizations, did not have wheels.
They didn't need them. They developed without them.
Okay.
They didn't need them.
Yeah, but wheels are still super useful.
They are.
They even had them on toys, but they did not have no carts, no whatever. We look back and we're like, oh man, how can you not have zero? Well, if you didn't know about zero, how would you think of it? But you can't think of nothing.
It wasn't.
An empty space in which something should be.
But human brains are not really good at thinking of not things. We're okay of thinking of things. We're good at that. But thinking of not things is harder.
I imagine something going on forever. What do you think of?
Even little tiny things like no zero, no multiplication. No multiplication is all kinds of things you can't do.
Why wouldn't?
We take it for granted. We're like, oh, math, I hate math. Oh, no, you don't. You love math. You just like it better when other people do it. Believe me, I know.
You have to say that you like math because I'm a math teacher, right? So kudos.
This is how you know that my wife is one of the most awesome beings on earth. She teaches junior high math.
What is junior math?
Really useful math, actually.
It's actually the really useful.
It's the useful stuff. Algebra.
Oh.
Algebra, pattern finding. No, that's useful math.
No. Finding patterns. Oh, math is so cool.
Math is super Next time, my wife will give you 3 hours of math. Oh, look at the time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attendance today. Thank you for your ridiculous novel writing. Thank you for your imaginations that are filled apparently with dead dinosaurs and dead or dead Evan. Yes, and frog, and stuff. You are excused, and I will see you legionaries in 2 weeks.
What? Not enough to be able to show you.
Probably Hamlet is the exact same plot as Hamlet, except
Did we get, Bev, did you, hey Jay, did we get all these? Okay. You may take your ship. I really, really, really wish that we had been able to race these, and maybe we will eventually, so don't throw them away.
I don't even know if mine's float dressing, so.
Well, that would be interesting.
You should put this on.
Probably. So what, tell me about Hamlet.
Hamlet is basically Hamlet, but I don't really know Hamlet that well.